I actually started selling online real estate. Resi probably wasn't for me. It was probably a bit too emotional. It's absolutely cutthroat. You're in your car, I reckon, probably 50% of the time. Probably do 26,000 Ks a year. I'm normally on the phone the whole way into the office. Trying not to get done for holding my phone. Love the transactions, love chasing deals. One deal they did last year, which was, I think, was the biggest ever sale, $100 million sale.
Welcome to Inside the Real Job with me, your host, Yenfu Chen. Get ready to explore the world of diverse careers while fascinating stories await. We'll delve into the pros and cons while witnessing ever-evolving industries. Join me as we connect with individuals from all walks of life, unveiling their secrets and navigating the dynamic world of work. Let's embark on this journey into the realm of real jobs. What drew you into the field of commercial real estate and not residential, Ben?
Well, funnily enough, I actually started off in residential. So, bit of background, how I landed in commercial real estate was I actually started selling online real estate for property.com.au. That was my first job sort of while I was at uni. I ended up going part-time, doing my Bachelor of Business. And the last couple of years, I've always worked pretty much the whole way throughout uni. I thought I'd better start to get some professional experience rather than just working at Liquorland. Property.com.au, which is really a tech company. It had just launched to compete against realestate.com.au. So I ended up selling basically online listing services. I was knocking on doors of real estate agents saying, hey, we've got this new platform. We'll give you a free computer if you use it as part of the package, and trying to get people to list online instead of just listing in their shop front windows. So I started selling to real estate agents, and then around that sort of time, I bought our first house and had a horrendous experience with a residential agent. So I thought, someone's got to be able to do this better. I actually got my license or my certificate of registration and started a job actually in Avalon. Back in the day, it was a Genman agent. So for those that don't know, Genman was no auctions, no open houses. It was the very old school. Come and sit in the office. I've got a photo book for you. We'll go through the photos. You'll tell me everything you want. We'll sort of work out a wish list. And then based on the 20 properties we've got listed, you'll jump in my car and we'll actually do a tour of the market. So I worked in First National Real Estate in Avalon for about 18 months. Found a bit of a niche in residential with selling units. Back in the day, you could buy a 2-bedroom unit for $600,000-$700,000 and then ended up getting laid off. I struggled when you're in your early 20s, you're dealing with baby boomers. The competitors had kids at the local schools and they had network. I grew up in Newport, had no network in Avalon. The agents in their 40s and 50s that had connections locally were getting a lot more business. And, oh, look, I'm going to give it to him because he's a mate, or our kids playing the same soccer team together. So I sort of did a bit of soul searching, sort of thinking resi probably wasn't for me. It was probably a bit too emotional. It's absolutely cutthroat and it's all about the listing. Anyone can run around with a buyer and do a deal with a buyer. It's all about bringing that listing on. So without the listing, you're basically not guaranteed any revenue. So found a job actually in the paper with a small commercial agency in North Sydney called Harlow Property Consultants. Worked with them for about 18 months and that was how I got my feet into commercial real estate. And then since then, found my niche. I loved it. Love the transactions, love chasing deals. And here I am today, so 20 years on in corporate real estate.
Nice. And what other aspect is different, commercial versus residential? It's more business versus that emotional side with your mums and dads?
Yeah, so that's what I found. So even when we look at property, you say, I want a view, I want 4 bedrooms, I want 2 bathrooms. Quite often in residential, you get someone, right, this has got everything you want. And then the husband says, but doesn't feel right. And commercial industrial that I do today, you pretty much take a wish list. What size trucks, what size clearance, how many deliveries you get a day, do you get containers, are you B2B, are you B2C, just understanding sort of how the business works, how many people staff in the office, how many work from home, really just taking a really good brief, and then you can do a short list of properties, show them those properties, and if you've got something that meets the brief plus the budget, generally you'll land a deal. Whereas in resi, you can run around with buyers for 6 or 8 months. Don't have to move. There's no lease expiry. They haven't got 10 containers on the water that they need to put in a warehouse somewhere. There's no urgency. Whereas in commercial real estate, it's very much more financial market driven. So it's all numbers. It's more investment. It's more a banking sort of focus rather than purely just very emotional actually. And generally most decisions in our business, it's all numbers. I've got a budget of X. If you can get that budget, we can do a deal. If not, we move on, we look for something else. So there's a little bit of emotion, but definitely nothing like residential.
Yeah, gotcha. And can you maybe walk us through what a day looks like?
My day starts, I'm not that much of an early riser. Normally in the office by 8:30. Normally, I like to try and do the hard things first. I try not to procrastinate. I've learned if you procrastinate, you waste emotional energy on thinking about the hard calls you need to make. So I try and do those hard calls early on in the morning. I'm normally on the phone the whole way into the office, just getting your headspace right for the day. I find in the business, you've got to be motivated. You can't go into the office feeling half full. You need to be 110% to perform well. So my morning is sort of getting my headspace right. And then by the time we've got three of us in our business in Macquarie Park. By the time we're in, you're buzzing. You normally another coffee by the time you get into the office, the second coffee for the day. We obviously have structured appointments with clients, which are fortnightly catch-ups. We're doing pitches. So it is all over the shop, but we do have a bit of structure around reporting, and obviously I take more operations sort of role than my day. Normally that's after hours because it's non-money producing sort of time. But yeah, my day would consist of inspections, canvassing, mentoring a young guy that works for us, meeting clients face to face. And I used to be very inflexible. What I've learned for doing this job, you need to be absolutely flexible. So if you're very structured and an inquiry might come through and they might say, I've just seen this property, I'm available in an hour to inspect it. Are you available? And if you qualify them and it seems like it's the right sort of property for them, if you don't inspect the property with them, another agent will. So you need to drop everything and run out there, only if it sort of ticks the boxes for what they're looking for. So you need to be really, really flexible, agile. And look, what hours do we work to? Like sometimes 5, sometimes 6. You do what you got to do. We don't work from home. That's one of the things we've sort of made a conscious decision. If you want to have the energy within the office, all three of you need to be there. And same with our young guy, Chris, who's only been with us 18 months and is absolutely smashing it. It's in the office every day.
If we're not working from home, it makes sense because, as you said, you've got to be really adaptable. Within half an hour, you might have to travel somewhere to show someone a property.
That's the thing in our business. It's tricky. You try and coordinate your day that you're not wasting time. So obviously, it's your own petrol to run between appointments. If someone says, I want to see something in Frenchs Forest at midday, for example, we're based in Macquarie Park, try and do inspections close to home on the way in or the way home. Mm-hmm. Worst case, we'll run out midday, but only if we can't do it in the morning or afternoon. We do a lot of driving, probably do 26,000 Ks a year, just appointments and running around. And it is a job that you're in your car, I reckon, probably 50% of the time.
And is that the other 50% or 40% you're on the phone?
Most of it's on the phone. Trying not to get done for holding my phone. And technology these days is great. So you can work anywhere, but we do try to go to the office just because to keep the culture alive. And yeah, it's just the cross-flow of information too.
That always helps.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're always talking, facing people. So how do you get your work? That point you made when you're in real estate, when you were just starting off and the people that you were competing or the other agencies that you were competing with already had a build-up of network because they lived in the area, their kids went to the local school. And now how do you get your work? Do you actually have to be proactive, or is it because you've built such a great brand as an individual and as a business? Yeah, so it's a good question. Look, it's a bit of residential that sort of rubbed off on me. But funnily enough, both Arland and I, who's my business partner, we both started off from residential. My stint there was very short, but you hear a lot of the agents today, you want to be an attraction business, and very much that is our philosophy. Look, you still got to canvass, you still got to cold call, and we do canvass, we do cold call. You hear market rumours, something's happening, and you'll pick up the phone, work out who to speak to and call them. But a lot of it's, hopefully we've done a good job servicing our clients, and generally in commercial, I think there's a lot more loyalty than in residential. So in residential, you might buy a house from LJ Hookers and you might go and sell through McGrath just because you bought your future house through McGrath. I think there's a lot more loyalty as long as you service your clients. So you got to stay in your client's face. You need to constantly give them market information, calling them, seeing what they're up to. Obviously, a lot of these clients are multinational institutions. They're REITs. They've got offshore investors. They're raising capital. Things are changing on a daily basis, both locally and globally. So it's just a matter of staying up to date. In our business, you snooze, you lose. If you fall asleep at the wheel, things happen under you. Basically, will happen overnight. Geez, I just spoke to you yesterday, but what's happened from this week to the next week? It's, this person came to us and offered this opportunity, so we decided to run with it. You know what I mean? So you really need to stay in client's face. And that's one of the things we struggle with, apart from picking up the phone, is like some sort of direct, whether it's a direct marketing piece going to clients. Everyone gets 80, 100 emails a day. So you got to somehow stay, and social media is probably a good way to stay in their face. Most corporates are on LinkedIn, and that's probably where they see a lot of what's going on, what's coming up for sale, what's being leased, and seeing the activity. So you somehow got to stay present, front of mind for them. So they're the first person they pick up the phone to. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And when you say clients, can we just deep dive into that? So you've got clients that own all the different commercial properties, and then you've got clients that buy these or use these for their companies, like lease them out.
So we've got a couple of different client bases. So our main clients, I would say, a combination of high net worth privates. So some of them old family money, some of them self-made portfolios that built up over the years. We've got syndicates. So you or I could go and invest in a syndicate. There'll be someone running that syndicate. Obviously, we won't deal directly with those investors. We deal with the head of the syndicate. And then most of our client instos, or what we call REITs. So most of the bigger sort of properties in Sydney are owned by REIT. They could be a listed REIT. They could be like a wholesale REIT. So Goodman or Goodman International, whatever you want to call them, AMP Capital, who have now exited sort of the property side of things, Dexus, they're all our clients, as well as high net worth. If you look at specifically in Macquarie Park, most of the buildings are owned by REITs. On the beaches, a little bit less institution sort of presence, but a lot more privates. So high net worths that might own a estate on the beaches, a estate in South Sydney, a estate in Western Sydney. And they're good clients to have. Generally, they're very loyal. Where REITs, there's a lot of loyalty to REITs. Some are more, whoever brings them the last deal, they'll be loyal to. So it's just that balancing act of, look, you got to service them all. They're all your clients. They're all going to pay you a fee eventually. So you just got to make sure you stay in front of all of them. It's tough because there's a lot of clients out there. So you really got to pick your segment you're focusing on and try and stay in their face.
And how do you pick the segment?
That's a good one. So I started off for Harlow's was really sort of the lower North Shore industrial markets. So back in the day, it was like, right, you really want to own a patch. So I cut my teeth in Chatswood and Artarmon. So East Roseville, where sort of off Eastern Valley Way there, and Artarmon, traditionally it's all been panel beaters and smash repairers and obviously got the hospital there, so a lot of medical sort of based industries that want to be around the hospital. So that's where I cut my teeth. Then a bit of Lane Cove, which is sort of like an offshoot of, if you can't find generally what you want in Chatswood, Artarmon, Lane Cove, sort of the next best. So generally you want to try and control a patch and be really good at that patch, be an expert. So drive through Chatswood and all you're seeing is one commercial signboards everywhere. That's ideally what you want to do. So I think from our roots in those sort of markets, generally, we've been mainly an industrial agency, but we're based in Macquarie Park. We've always done deals in Macquarie Park, which is more an office park. Frenchs Forest has been a market I've operated in for sort of 15, 16 years. So we are also in that business park space, or the bigger office buildings, large floor plates. So yeah, I suppose our core business is industrial office parks. We don't do retail, and we're sales and leasing. So I think you need to be able to do both. You might lease something to someone one day, they want to buy the next. A lot of the big agencies pigeonhole you into you're either sales or you're leasing. You can't do both, and they have specialists just for cap trans, they call it, or for sales. Our belief is, given we're only a headcount of 3, you need to be both. And we've got a good mixture of skill sets. My business partners come from purely a cap trans sort of background. I've been predominantly leasing, so I think we complement each other well.
A good mix, yeah. And you mentioned earlier about the market trends and the changes. How do you keep up to date with that? Is there like a place that you go to, or networks that you do, associations, or do you just read the paper a lot?
Look, so there's a whole lot of industry. There's REI, but that's probably more residential focused. So the Real Estate Institute in New South Wales. Most of our stuff, to be honest, is online. So there's so much information online through, whether it's through AFR, through the Australian, through LinkedIn. You've got to be present on LinkedIn. You've got to be constantly looking at LinkedIn for trends, what's selling for what. It's an easy way to start to date with what's going on in the market. Obviously, a lot of the majors have research houses, or they have a research department. They put out reports quarterly. The Australian Property Industry, or API, also puts out trends on the vacancy rates, the net absorption, supply coming online. So there's a lot of data to consume. You really just got to stay on top of it. And we do our own tracking of a couple of markets that can delve down and manageable to actually understand vacancy rates, tracking net rents, tracking incentives, obviously tracking big moves in each market too, which is setting new benchmarks for rents and incentives. So you really just got to be constantly looking at social media, keeping ear to the grounds. And also you get a lot of that from clients. So you'll speak to a client, we've heard you've just sold X building. And then before you know it, we sold this to this person, they bought it for this. And of course, there's an opportunity. There's a new owner. You try and reach out to the new owner and turn it into something, you know what I mean? See if you can assist them if they've got a leasing campaign. But it's really just staying in touch with industry peers and clients and keeping ear to the ground. It's a really fast-paced environment. So unless you are speaking to people, you lose track of what's happening in the market.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And while we are on the subject of keeping up to date with your knowledge and learning, can you maybe just touch on like what license do you need to do what you do, or what you know, studies, and do you have to keep up with any accreditation or anything?
You do. So you basically need. So back in the day, there was either you just had a certificate or you're a licensee. They've now changed, restructured all the certification. So now you need to hold. So the entry level is a certificate of registration. I think they've rebranded it, but you can only hold that for a certain amount of time. Whereas previously you could be a certificate. You could just hold a certificate of registration and work forever. Now you need to hold a certificate, and you've got to be working towards a Class 2 license. So, and then there's a Class 1 license. So Class 1 license is the licensee in charge, could be the licensee in charge of an office. And then Class 2 is what I am. And you do need to do CPD points. So I couldn't own a real estate office being Class 2 agent. you need to be a class 1 to be the licensee, but I can transact and do everything else. I can't run a trust account. You need to be class 1. My business partner's class 1, so I have no need to have a class 1 license. The CPD points, most of it's linked more to residential. All your CPD courses, there's not many companies that specialize in commercial, but there are some groups starting to focus purely on commercial, and what we come up with, misquoting areas and how you get your advice from clients and need everything in writing and them to approve everything so you're not guiding incorrectly. Yeah, compliant. Look, it's a lot of it, to be honest, is common sense. A lot of the CPD stuff is just put yourself in the other shoes. If you misguided someone, what's going to happen? You're going to get sued. So you got to be really careful.
Okay. Based on what we've spoken about so far, I think the standout is dealing with people all the time, right? Whether it's on the phone or face to face. Is that a skill that you just naturally had, or did, again, being in real estate initially help you build that?
Yeah, it's funny, you go into a party or something, you don't know anyone. I've always been able just to join a group and start a conversation somehow. So I think the biggest, making connections with people, I can talk about anything and everything. Quite often I'm told to shut up, talk less. But I think you just got to find that commonality. And sometimes, and a lot of the time it is, you're out of your comfort zone, reaching out to new people that you've never spoken to before, but you always find some commonality, whether it's where you grew up, whether it's where you worked, whether it's, you can talk about a deal, you can talk about what they do on the weekend to get the conversation flowing, where the kids go to school, what sports the kids play. There's always something you can connect with. Talk about the holiday where they went overseas and you might have been somewhere similar. Like, there's always some commonality. You got to find that commonality to build a relationship. And especially, it's hard these days, and probably the hardest period we had was during COVID, especially if you're trying to build new relationships, because it's hard to build a relationship over Teams. Even over the phone, you need that warmth, you need to eyeball people. Quite often, Teams meetings awkward. There's silence, you don't know who to talk, or you're talking over the top of each other. But I've never found it hard building relationships with people. It's reaching out to them and making that first connection. When you made a connection, it's normally easy. Yeah,
nice. And based on skills, we talked about keeping up with trends. 2, the people skills. What other important skills is required in your role?
Yeah, so and then probably when I reflect from residential to commercial space I'm in today, I think the biggest learning curve I've ever had is it's an absolute emotional roller coaster, commercial real estate. Any real estate is. So you're only as good as your last deal. So
sounds like something from a movie, but
it's true.
It's
so true. It's so true. So, and you ride waves. So especially when you start out, you might have one deal on the go at a time, and if that one deal doesn't happen, you've got all your eggs in one basket, and that deal falls over. You sort of had in your back of your head, I've got this deal, it's a $20,000 fee, I'm going to do this deal, this is going to be a great month, and that deal falls over. So emotions, you really need to control your emotions. That's probably one of the biggest. Look, and it takes time. Like, I'd go into work one day on top of the moon, and then the next day I'd be like, I can't believe that deal fell over. I thought I had this month stitched up. If you can conquer that and ride the waves, I think simply you just need more eggs in your basket, more in the pipeline, basically, and then eventually will drop out. The deals will drop. That's probably the hardest thing to conquer, especially when you're young, entering a very competitive market where you've got people that relationships go back 20, 30 years for some operators. It's very hard for someone young to come and crack it. Our young guy, Chris, doing extremely well. Once again, he's learned how to build relationships, and we're teaching him, do not bank on one deal. You need to have lots of deals. Don't just spend all your time and energy on one deal. Have that one deal going, put that to the side, service it, make sure it's progressing, but get more in the pipeline. You can't afford just to be banking on a monster fee, because that drops and you're going to go to ground for a couple of days going, what do I do? How do I recover it? How do I find something else? That is the hardest. That is the biggest skill. Look, there's a whole lot for real estate. Like, negotiation's a big part of it. And look, quite often there's someone that misses out. You might have two parties chasing something. I think to be in the business long term, you need to build trust. You've got to be transparent with people. You've got to tell it how it is. You can't shaft people. You've got to, because they're not going to deal with you again. You just got to be absolutely transparent in all your dealings and be honest, I think, because if you're not honest, you get caught out. That's probably some of the key mottos we live by. And a client, someone who's a tenant today might be an owner tomorrow, might be a client tomorrow. You never want to burn a bridge. That's my other I think a big philosophy I've always learned, lived by. You burn one person, they're going to go and tell 4 or 5, this guy's an absolute dickhead. Don't deal with him, and that's really going to create issues. There are some people in our industry who've got bad names, and clients they'll be on the blacklist. They will not speak to them. So you got to be really careful not to burn a bridge. And it's hard at times because sometimes you want to let loose at a client that you feel like you're being shafted on a fee or something, but sometimes you just got to be a bit diplomatic and take a deep breath and have a think about it, and then re-engage. Yeah.
And you mentioned way early in the conversation, it's quite a cutthroat industry, and that's across residential and commercial.
Yeah, it's cutthroat because it's sales. Like it's all it's transactional, and the fees at play. Residential, $3 million house, you might get a $60,000 fee. In commercial, colleague did a large deal last year. I think he'd worked on it for 18 months. It was, I think, the biggest deal he's ever done, but 18 months worth of work for one fee. It was a sizable fee. It's probably the biggest he's ever written. I think that's why it's so cutthroat. At any one time, the longer that drags on, the risk of it not happening is greater. So, and a lot of our deals, residential, generally, your typical property these days is 4 weeks, auction campaign, for sale sign goes up, the street gets peppered with brochures, 6 open houses, and the property's sold at auction or thereafter. Our business is long term. So some of our lease listings, some things get leased very quickly, but a lot of it, they're campaigns that drag on for quite some time. You might have a building that's 4,000 metres, you can't subdivide it. You've got to find a 4,000 metre tenant who's going to pay for every square metre of that space. The other part of being cutthroat as an industry is you're on a salary, you have a multiplier, especially in the large agencies. So there are optics externally, you're reporting up, the local business reporting up to Asia Pac. If you're not hitting your multipliers, you've only got a very short window to survive in that industry. Sure, you've got the first 12 months, you've probably got a bit of leeway because you're new to the business, but after that, you're expected to hit your targets. So it is very cutthroat. And every year the targets are stretched. That's in corporate world, in corporate major multinational sort of agency. But I suppose with the small agency, look, we don't do a deal, we don't eat. So I think it's as simple there's only 3 of us. We don't pay ourselves a salary, the 2 principals, myself and Arland. We don't do a lease deal, sales deal. We don't take a cent home that month. It's as simple as that. Obviously, we've got a younger guy does get a salary, but that's how cutthroat it is. So you've got pressure on yourself to perform. Everyone's got obligations, mortgages, and aspirations of where they want to be. So yeah, it's really cutthroat, but that sort of motivates you at the same time. So you got to get out of bed, you got to get fired up, and you got to focus. And yeah, some days, Mondays, you come in with a bit of Monday-itis, but by the afternoon, you'll be humming. Well, you got to do something to get back in that mindset.
Yeah, great. And you talked about you got to have good negotiation skills. Yep. Is that, again, just something you came over time, or is it like the industries provide what you mentioned, mentorship or particular courses you go on to build sales skills?
And that's where I probably reflect back to where I started in real estate. So I still to this day think the best agents have come from residential background. Residential is the ultimate training ground for skills and negotiation. And I think, look, I look back and I suppose I was quite, had my nose out of joint when I got laid off from First National back in early 2000s. Thought, I was doing deals, or why did I get made redundant? But I look back and to be honest, it was the best training ground I could have had. The Genman system was basically, you don't just sign up for a job and here's your job, here's a desk, here's a phone book, go for it. It was you had to pass basically a Genman training course before you actually got the job. So which was absolutely stringent. You had to be able to, there was a whole lot of role plays, there were scripts and dialogues. You knew the scripts and dialogues off by heart. So, which I think was a bit too robotic, and it doesn't suit everyone. Like I've never been a scripted person. Like, you know what to say. You need to come across natural, not like a robot. But you need to, I think those foundations have really helped in shaping you as an agent. And I suppose residential gave you a bit of courage too. Like, if you hadn't done residential, it would have been daunting picking up the phone and calling someone for the first time I'd never spoken to. But in residential, you learn that's what you got to do. You get a reverse phone book, 1 to 100 in whatever street you're in, and you dial everyone through that street saying, hey, I've just sold the property around the corner, got a great result, got any plans the next couple of years. But yeah, look, I think the resi upbringing absolutely shaped, and it gives you no fear really. Like and the negotiation side of it. So there was negotiation sort of was one part of that Genman framework, and everything. So, and that's the thing with the Genman thing. It was always, everything was by negotiation. There was none of this auction, stand back and let the auctioneer call an auction. That's probably the easy way to sell these days, to tell you the truth. It's really just a process. And I think an auction, if you do the process well, you get the right outcome. I think with the negotiation, you try and control the process, but it go any which way. So yeah, absolutely nailing your skills in negotiation and having a negotiation framework, I think really helps. Looking in corporate real estate, You're still negotiating deals, but you sort of have a bit of a guidance as to where an owner's going to go to. They've got budgets that have been approved. It's a little bit more transparent than when at residential, it's really pulling on heartstrings. Look, you sure you want to miss out for 20 grand? You know what I mean? Like the next 5 years, 20 grand over 5 years is nothing. You're really pushing. But in business, they couldn't give a shit. No, it doesn't make sense. Unless I can get this, I'm not going to do the deal. Lots of businesses are like that. So whereas residentials, you really got to learn to negotiate, because especially when you're not auctioning and letting the auctioneer close the deal for you.
Come with all that negotiation skills, you would have got more rejections than success, I'd say. And again, that resilience, is that something you just get used to?
Yeah, the resilience definitely comes with experience. The resilience when you first start out is you're up and down. Your headspace it really plays with your headspace, and you've got to be really headstrong. I think these days, the way I look at it, if you've got enough going on, if one deal falls over, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, it might be a big deal, might be a small deal, but there's something else around the corner. So from my perspective these days, I don't get too bogged down. A deal falls over, I put a lot of effort into that. I want to get a result for the amount of time I put in, but I want to get a result for the client too. Like, you're there to deliver results for clients. You're not there to, and obviously make fees and put tenants into new homes to their business. But you've just got to have a lot going on, and your resilience, it ends up, these days, it's water off a duck's back. The hardest thing I think in our business is you try and act honestly with everyone with integrity, and when you just get told porkies from people, that's the worst, when people lie to you, tell you one thing and do something totally different. But yeah, I think over time, look, the longer you're in it, if you're a new starter, I think you just can't focus on the money. You got to focus on what you're helping people move. When people start focusing on the money, counting their pennies before the deals actually drop, that's when it turns into an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah, that's a good tip. What aspects of the job that you might not like doing? Because we usually have things that we don't like in a job. Is there any in your space?
Having hard conversations with people is probably what I find the toughest. Not with vendors. I'm happy to tell a vendor, you're priced at X, your competitor's at Y, we need to move on this, we need to, they're easy conversations. The hard conversations are probably with colleagues, with staff. Previous roles with CBRE and JLL, it was having those conversations internally. And the problem is, because there's so much money involved, everyone's out there to make commission. You think you're entitled to X, and then someone thinks you're entitled to Y. I think having those hard conversations very early on in a deal is probably the hardest thing I struggle with, especially with the majors. Like, you might do all the work and then there's a few hands come out for a part of a fee, which you didn't expect, or vice versa. And some hard conversations, telling someone you missed out on something, that's not easy. I'm sorry, there's someone else that's prepared to pay more. The owners decided to proceed with them for these reasons. Someone's really upset because they really wanted that property. So letting them off, there's no such thing as letting them off lightly, but trying to then provide another solution so they don't throw their toys out of the cot and hate you because you shafted them. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we do what our clients, we're instructed by our clients, so we try and let them make the decisions. We'll give them advice. We might run an EOI campaign, expressions of interest, and 2 buyers at the same number, and the vendor thinks one's going to perform, the other one they don't know, there's no track record, and they decide one over the other, and that's a hard conversation. Look, I'm sorry, you're not going to buy this, and they've got approvals and spent a heap of money on DD, and it's not easy. Those sort of things I find the most challenging. Yeah.
Okay. I assume it must be a real high once you sign a contract that's got a 10-year lease, or you sell a property. Do you have one success story that you can share with us that you always reflect back to, maybe when there's times that you might have had 2 deals that dropped off? Do you go back to a moment where you're like, no, I can still do this because I had such a good success in that one moment?
Look, I think my business partner, there's one deal they did last year, which was, I think, both of us, was the biggest ever sale, $100 million sale off market, which is always, it's sort of a once in a lifetime deal if you're not in that cap trans space, the institutional level full time. But that was a roller coaster. That was like a 12-month roller coaster, to tell you the truth. So it's the highs and lows, and the deal's finally done. You're like, I can't believe that really happened. You know what I mean? So I don't have one deal I reflect on. I think you get the most satisfaction out of the business when you move someone into a new premises and you really see that business thrive. That's what really does it for me. You help them grow their business. You help them move into better space. And they're happy for being there, not moving, the roof's leaking, it's a nightmare, your landlord's a nightmare. That's probably what I get the most thrill out of. And I do try and do check-ins with tenants I place in the space. It's not a deal done, set and forget, send your invoice out and forget about the tenant. Tenant's got to become a client of yours or a prospect of yours again down the track at the lease expiry. So you got to stay in touch with them. You got to try and sort out any issues, even post. It might be 6 months into a lease and you just do a, hey, how's it all going? Oh, I need more space. I've outgrown this. Or just acquired a business. Great. Can we help you put you somewhere else? Where do you want to go? What I've learned is you've got to service both your clients, the owners, plus also the tenants. Got to stay in contact. It's nice when you can help with business and you keep a relationship with that tenant. I suppose really floats my boat, if you want to call that.
Yeah, gotcha. When you say great story of getting someone in the property that they really want so they can grow their own business, do you help them set it up? Do you have tradespeople to make sure that they're all happy, or is that just something that they do on their own? Yeah, so we, over the years, we do have a network of fit out people, of certifiers, of private certifiers, of mortgage brokers, and we do, and probably they're more friends that we refer into. I've got one mate of mine, we've known each other for 18 years. There's just trust there. You want and only want to refer to people that are going to make you look good. If they're not going to make you look good, and I've referred in a couple of businesses and they've done a really bad job, or the tenants come back and said their price was 30% more than someone else, and I won't refer them again, because the whole point of referring is they help a deal happen and they make you look good. And yes, everyone benefits. So we do have a pretty good network we deal with, and we're always looking at how that network can improve and who else can add to that network. Look, obviously there's a lot of fit out companies out there chasing fit out work, and I think over the time, another one's done a whole lot of work for my father, did a really good job, and I'll always use him because you can trust him. The trust is the biggest thing. So you're getting feedback on tenants telling them one thing, hopefully they're telling us the same thing. So that also is why we refer in people we can trust. That'll help you get the deal done and everyone benefits. Okay, and the way you're dealing with people over the last 20 odd years, relationship building, daily checks in or every couple of months, do you think that's going to change in the future? Is there anything that's happening in your industry that's going to threaten those kind of aspects or the roles that people are in general? Funny you say that. So the biggest trend at the moment is work from home. So COVID created it. If you look at statistics of a lot of the majors, it's sort of Monday and Friday are traditionally the days people work from home. So I think the new norm today is 3 and 2, 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. I know that productivity's down. It's probably the worst it's ever been. Is that going to change? I know most employers are wanting people to come back to the office. Multiple reasons. We've got this office space that no one's using. Collaboration, efficiencies, productivity. That's probably been the biggest thing that's impacted our industry in the last, since I've been in it, apart from the cyclical, economic factors that we're at what's a cash rate at 4.7%. That obviously impacts it greatly. There's a reset capital market side of things. I think where the work from home piece is going to go, I actually think we'll move to 4-day working weeks. I reckon people will start to come back to the office and say, right, you can have one day, you're efficient for the 4 days, you can have one day off. I think that's where I'll end up. I just can't see this working from home. A lot of people have made massive lifestyle decisions on the back of it and move regional and so forth. Maybe if you're in the tech space, maybe that will work. Programming, you don't need to. You can have a team screen on all day. But that's probably the biggest change I see that is really, the vacancy rates in the office space in CBD markets are ridiculous because of work from home. And businesses scratching their head, how much space do we need? We don't know. When's this going to change? When's it going to go from the 8 and 2, the 3 and 2 to everyone back in the office? And businesses struggling to plan for that, what the next office looks like. That's the biggest challenge we've had to our industry. The other large one at the moment is, the cost of real estate, the cost of living, the transport is through the roof at the moment. And a lot of, we're seeing a few tenants feel the pinch. Rents have been huge growth over the last handful of years. Is that going to stop? I think it has to. A lot of industrial real estate is starting to get unaffordable for a lot of tenants. Basically, they've got to pass on those increased costs to customers, or they've got to find space that's be more efficient in their use of space. So it's an interesting time in the market. We are going through a bit of a transition, and all this is since COVID. So since COVID, a lot of businesses are asking for less space. So industrial-wise, it's all more space. So with the supply chain issues out of China and a lot of the ports and manufacturers being shut down, everyone during COVID surprisingly wanted more space. They wanted to future-proof supply chain kinks. So, and we're starting to see that normalise again now. There's companies that have taken more space. I'm seeing quite a few that we've leased more, that might have grown 30% and now going, well, we didn't really need that space. Supply chains are just-in-time inventory. Cost of real estate's gone up 25, 30% since COVID. We don't need the space. We'll operate with less space and now just in time, because we can't see COVID coming back for something similar, a pandemic for the next 100 years. So it's returning more to normality. So from an office perspective, your typical office tenant would sign a 5-year lease is probably average for a larger corporate, probably maybe longer.
5 to 7 might be average. If you're a small business, maybe 3 years. But what we're finding at the moment, so A, what's the size, what's the footprint we need, how many people do we need to house? And a lot of that's unknown, because who's going to be working from the office today, in 2 years and 3 years? We still don't, a lot of the businesses don't know. That's one of the major issues. Some other issues with planning, I think, for businesses is a lot of businesses are also looking flight to quality with so much vacancy, and they might go and move to a CBD location. They might have been in the burbs. They want to attract better labour. Obviously, we've still got an employment rate that's extremely tight. That starts to blow out. People might return to the office.
Yeah, so do you feel like people now, your other comment was
space
and coming back to 4 days a week? Because I assume there's companies now got their leaser up and they renew.
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges I think today, and this is all since COVID, is construction costs. From an operational perspective for a business, so say they've got a lease expiring today and they're in 2,000 metres, their staff are working from home a couple of days a week, they could probably shrink that, say they're in 1,000, they could probably shrink it down to 700. The biggest challenge everyone has, fit out costs have gone through the roof. Very, very ballpark. Most contractors are quoting fit out. You wouldn't get a fit out in a A grade, B grade building under $1,000 a metre. And that's probably low. It's probably like $1,100, $1,200 a metre for a new fit out. So that's sort of driving tenants' commitment. So obviously every office deal there's an incentive. The landlord's giving up some sort of rent-free period or contribution to fit out. Businesses at the moment don't want to raise capital internally. They don't want to go to corporate and say, hey, I need $1 million to do this fit out. So I'd say 90% of the deals, the fit out's getting funded by the landlords. The lease terms are getting linked back to what money do we need to do this fit out? And the lease terms are getting linked back to, right, if we need $2 million, we might be able to get $500,000 signed off offshore, but we need the 1.5 from the deal. So my colleagues just done a sizable deal in St Leonard's. It was purely, they couldn't go to corporate going, I need $1 million for a fit out. Corporate just go, no. So that's a challenge at the moment. And the fit outs, they're not going backwards, the price. And it's not just build costs, it's compliance. I've heard a few builders say New South Wales is one of the most highly regulated as far as from a building perspective. The CDC, the compliance, the fire solutions, the HVAC, all these costs just come on top, get loaded onto doing a fit out, which makes it extremely expensive. So there's two things that does. It makes tenants, when they do a new fit out, and if they have a full make good on that, makes them very sticky. So they're not going to go anywhere because they've just invested so much. They're not going to want to do it all again in 5 years' time. And the others, what we were seeing when tenants had expiries, this is office tenants, post-COVID, we really don't know where our business is going. Let's just what we call kick the can down the road. So we've just come off a 5-year lease. We don't know what our footprint's going to look like. We don't know what our headcount in the office is going to look like. Hey, Mr. Landlord, can we do a 2-year extension? Which generally speaking, landlords would be, no way, it's 5 years or see you later. We want to beat our lease expiry profile. But lately, landlords, because where the vacancy rates are sitting, happy to kick the can down the road. Couple of years, bit of an uplift in rent. The business gets a bit of surety and gives them 2 years to decide what the new office looks like and defers that relocation cost. So yeah, it's interesting times. Like it's resettling slowly, but still a long way to go. And of course, this co-working's come out too, which people are going, well, let's just be flexible. Let's just go to I was going to say a WeWork, but they're no more. But let's just go to something like, there's so many cool co-working space in the city, which is very scalable, and you might have a core office somewhere and use that for your flex space until you understand what your new footprint looks like.
Yeah, interesting times. And that's from an industry perspective. But what about your role? Do you feel like someone that's going to come in starting now, like your young guy Chris, or someone that's about to come in finishing high school next couple of years, do you feel like the role itself is going to change, or do you feel like the fundamentals there is all about that whole trust, build that relationship?
Look, it's funny you say that, because there are a few agents that work remotely. So during COVID have taken off overseas and still write big figures living in the States or whatever else.
Is that because they've built a pool of clients perhaps?
Yeah, correct. I don't think that's sustainable personally. People want to deal with people they get on with. But you need to, it's a bit like the Teams meetings. Like, great to have the odd Teams meeting, but there's nothing like a face-to-face catch-up with people. Just what it uncovers during a face-to-face catch-up is way more than what you get over a Teams, a very sort of stunted conversation that talking over the top of each other, and you don't know when the other person's going to talk. You can't see their mannerisms. Yeah, so it's, look, I can't see the agent being replaced. I think definitely technology is going to help. A lot of the logistics groups, large logistics groups, have all sorts of software that determine where they should be based because of cost of transport and whatever else. But I definitely think more technology is going to come in. There's a whole lot of robotics coming into automated warehousing in Australia. Generally, we're a small market compared to US and Europe, but the robotics is coming in. Definitely the way large organisations make locational decisions and commitment decisions to logistics is definitely changing. In my particular business and our space, we're not seeing that as much on the North Shore. Like the North Shore is very landlocked. There's no more industrial land. There's a lot of old product in our market. I think inventory management is probably people are going to start to get smarter with inventory management, what they're holding, given the cost of real estate. They're going to have to. Rents are $300 a metre gross now for industrial on the North Shore. On average, probably higher. It depends on where you are. The closer to the city, the closer to major arterials, they're higher. And that's a massive cost. So I can see maybe people on their stock, more just in time, coming back into play when there's certainty on freight. Look, I don't think the agent's going to be replaced. I really don't. I still think computers can't negotiate deals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
No two deals are the same. Like you might have a standard, what we call heads of agreement, which we use, but there's always special conditions. There's always, I want the racking to stay, or I want to buy that racking, or I don't want this removed, but I want that. There's all these idiosyncrasies of every single deal. So no two deals are the same. You need that personal touch to bring that to a head.
Yeah,
and negotiate it.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's all my core questions. I like to finish with one last question that I do with everyone. If you're going to give a couple of tips, what does it take to be successful, to be in the same shoes as you for someone that's starting off? So you mentioned already, definitely do probably residential. What else? Yeah,
it depends on what stream you want to go in. There's so many streams in commercial real estate. When I say commercial, that's very, very much an umbrella. So generally, commercial real estate is broken down to asset classes, say shopping centres or retail, bulky goods, industrial, office parks, rural. So look, I went down this path of not knowing really what I wanted to do when I went to uni. I liked the idea of business, I loved business studies, I loved economics. So I thought, I'll do a bachelor of business degree. In hindsight, was that time wasted? Probably not. I learned a lot. I learned how to write reports, which you don't really learn at school. I went back and did a master's, and it was a master's in property development, thinking one day I wanted to get into development myself. I think I've seen too many people go bust and lose everything from it. So definitely I tinker with residential property myself, but definitely won't become a property developer unless you've got very deep pockets. I would recommend, there's two streams. Some people do the resi. Really, you learn the 101 of real estate. It's very tough to get your name out there and build market share. So I think it's a very good grounding from a canvassing perspective, sort of getting a feel for what real estate's really like. But I think there's a lot of people that just go to uni and do a property degree, do a straight property degree, which is more around, look, it's really finance. It's a finance degree. Anything in the institutional space is really finance related. A lot of the fund managers got finance degrees. You need to understand DCS, MPVs. You need to understand valuation methodology, how all that works. Doing resi, you don't really get that, because the residential real estate pricing is very simplistic. It's what did this sell for? What did that sell for? Did that have a view? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Whereas what space we deal in is very much, it's funding, it's returns, it's expected returns, IRRs, all these other things that you need to understand. And having done resi and not done a finance degree, you'd be clueless. You come in and go, well, what's that? How does that work? You really need to understand the mechanics of how the trusts think. So you're on the same wavelength. You understand what they're trying to achieve. A property degree, if you want to get into corporate real estate, would be a great grounding. Then the hardest thing is getting experience. So getting your foot in the door to some of the majors, they want determination. They want someone who's hungry if you want to get in a sales role. But there's lots of you don't have to be in sales. You could be in property management. You could go and be a valuer. It's such a good industry, and it's so fast paced. It's sometimes hard to stay up to date with what's going on in your markets you work in. Or if you can go and get it, ideally, if you can get some sort of graduate job, that would be, so you get a feel for every aspect of some of the major firms. So valuation, some of them have residential arms. So you really get a plethora of every single asset class. And then you can come out going, I actually like industrial, or I actually like retail, or valuations. That's what I'd recommend if someone's going to start. If you want to be a sales agent, I think the resi is a really good grounding, just because you learn how to negotiate, you learn how to deal with people's emotions. But resi, you've got to be out a long time to really make any money. I suppose like any real estate, but at the resi market, you've got to build a name in that. You're in Coleroy, you've got to be in Coleroy for 3 or 4 years and specialise in some, maybe it's apartment sales or something, to really build a name for yourself. So maybe it's come in as an assistant agent or do a bit of property management, just learn a bit how to negotiate, learn the ropes, and then transition in a major. That would be a great way to start. And you really got to specialise. You do have to specialise. You can't be a generalist, and that's why we don't touch, there's no retail, purely office, industrial. Yeah.
And I think just touching on that, sounds so broad. It's not just the one thing. There's so many opportunities. Like you said, if you don't really want to get into sales, there's other aspects of commercial real estate.
Yeah, and not everyone's a salesperson, you know what I mean? I think you've got to be really hungry. I think a lot of it, you've got to have a lot of drive. There's no one telling you every day you've got to get up and make 20 canvas calls. You've got to do it yourself on your own back. You've got to You got to be hungry. You got to want to chase deals. You got to know how to close. You can't just drag a tenant on and not know how to actually go, right, do you want to lease this or not? And there's some hard conversations you got to have, but you learn over time. You get a bit of a backbone and learn to ask those hard questions and slowly chip away, closing, knowing you're going to get to an outcome. Either path would work. That's one thing I didn't touch on. The biggest thing for me, getting out of resi, passionate about sailing, working weekends killed me. If you've got a young family, back in the day, I didn't have kids when I started, but working on a Saturday when everyone else is out enjoying themselves was tough, really hard to see. And sometimes Sundays. In the Gemman system, you also work Sundays. Obviously, you get 2 days off somewhere, but the great thing about what we do, it's Monday to Friday. Yes, I'll respond to emails at 10 o'clock at night. You don't switch off. There to service clients, but at least you do know the weekend you can make plans, enjoy yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Excellent. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Jen.
Great insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been really good.
I hope you found that episode with Ben enjoyable. I was truly fascinated by the insights that he shared about the real estate world, whether it was residential or commercial. The standout lesson for me is all about being self-motivated and resilient. To excel in this field, self-motivation is key. It's about pushing yourself to make those calls and meet those individuals who might shape your future opportunities, even if it's uncomfortable. Building and maintaining a strong, ongoing relationship are the fundamentals. Sometimes they pay off immediately, other times it's like a long-term investment, but nurturing them is critical. Resilience is equally essential. Rejections are part of the journey, and bouncing back from the setbacks is non-negotiable. Managing multiple jobs and diversifying your opportunities is really important, as it softens the impact of any setbacks. Well, I hope you found value in that episode, especially if you're aspiring to join the real estate world. And remember, make today a good news day.